Varsågoda, camera, action.
Good.
Trump gained votes even from members of the precariat as well. Could you say anything about it?
I think just as part of the precariat in the United States, just as part of it in Sweden or Britain, are people who've fallen from old working class communities and families. They don't have a lot of education, but they are fearful, they're facing insecurity, and they listen to populists, neo-fascists, racists, playing on their fears and saying their problem is due to another part of the precariat. And this group voted for Donald Trump. This group would vote for the Sweden Democrats. This group would vote for Brexit and next year for Marine Le Pen. But it's only part of the precariat. Another part of the precariat consists of the migrants, the minorities, who keep their heads down politically. And another part of the precariat is the young, educated, who went to university, and now have no sense of future, no political parties representing their interests. This part wouldn't have voted for Donald Trump. Now, the first group that has voted for Donald Trump, ironically, will not gain much from having done so, because this is an authoritarian who doesn't understand economics, he doesn't have any values of decency, of dignity, of social solidarity. But unfortunately, he's playing on prejudice. He's allowing prejudice to spread. And that, I think, is inexcusable.
Yeah, then I'm actually thinking about your book, The Precariat. And there you also talk about the market and their demand of flexibility on their behalf. What kind of implication does it mean for the labor then?
I think that the situation has moved on from the years of the 20th century, when a social democratic answer to the insecurity of the labor market was to give the welfare state and give so-called labor rights. It's moved on from that, because today we have open economies, we have flexible labor markets, we have class structures that are different, and those old policies won't work. And we need to open our eyes and our minds to new reactions to changed circumstances. And unless the Social Democrats in Sweden or elsewhere wake up to these new realities and come forward with different policies, they should step aside and new groups will emerge to take their place. What we need to realize is we cannot turn the clock back. We cannot say we're going back to the old Swedish model. It won't happen. It's dead. It was very progressive for a period in the middle decades of the last century. Today, in an open economy, flexible labor markets, insecure labor relations, we need to think differently. New forms of voice, new collective organizations to represent people who are insecure and are insecure in their lives, not just in the labor market. So we need new forms of income security. We need new forms of agency for work, for people's values. And we need to realize that the agenda is more ecological. It's more about rescuing the commons that is threatened around us. And I think the precariat agenda that I've tried to spell out in my books resonates far more with the young educated than the old social democratic model, which was based on a proletariat and an industrial society. We don't have that today. We have a highly articulate, highly educated population, and most of those people treat jobs as instrumental, as something that, yes, they would like because they need the income, but they find the challenges outside those jobs. And that part of the precariat is looking for a politics that is different from the old social democratic politics. And I think that's very exciting. And I think that in response to the rise of Trump and Brexit and all these disgusting tendencies, we're going to get a new energy inside the precariat, which will put pressure on progressive politicians or say, step aside, we will come in, enter politics. So it's a very fertile period, and that we must accept, and it may be disruptive, it may involve some anger, it may involve a lot of revolt, as I call it in the new book, but I think we're at a very interesting point of a new progressive politics evolving out of the chaos.
But I'm actually thinking about the security of the people.
Economic security is a fundamental human right. It's vitally important that everybody has basic economic security. You can't function if you're economically insecure. You can't be rational. And it's unfair to expect people to be rational if your policies create insecurity. It's not acceptable. Everybody needs basic security because that helps with the mental strength. It helps you take a long-term perspective. It helps you be altruistic, tolerant. Now, the only way in the current circumstances to move in that direction is to move towards a system where everybody has basic economic security because of a basic income. I believe that now all politicians have got to step back from their preconceived opinions, think about it, and say, wouldn't I like the Sweden of tomorrow and tomorrow, that every Swede, every person living in Sweden has basic income security so that they can have some sense of control over their lives. I think if we think like that, then we are more open about it. Don't be moralistic and say only if you behave in certain ways. It's vital that everybody behaves according to the law, but that's it, the law. Beyond that, I don't think politicians should be moralistic. They should be concerned about giving people security to help them with their freedom and trust people. We all want to improve our lives. We all want security so that we can take decisions. This nonsense about if you gave people basic income security, they'd all be lazy. We've shown in our pilots that's not the case. It's the opposite. People who have basic security are more energized. They're more confident. They're more entrepreneurial. And they're also more solidaristic towards others. And I think that the political establishments now, confronted with Trumpism and all these terrible things, are going to be much more open, or if not, they are failing in their duty to their societies.
Let's say that basic income will be neglected and considered as impossible.
If people think like that, it's our responsibility to put pressure on them to change their mind or step aside, because they are failing their own society by running away. If they've got a better answer, then let's hear it, because I haven't heard it. I don't know if you've heard it, but I haven't heard it, and a lot of the young people in Sweden tell me they haven't heard it either. So we've got to change their mentality. Stop erecting a wall saying it's impossible. It's not impossible. Of course it's not. We've just done pilots in India where we gave people a basic income, a modest basic income. It's a poor country. And yet people improved their lives. They worked more. They created more output. They generated economic growth because they had security. And we have to do the same. What's different about Sweden or Britain? We can do it. And I think the politicians have got to get out of their old ways of thinking, which might have been progressive or good 30 years ago. But can't you see that you've been failing ever since? Those politicians? Can't you see that you're almost dead men walking? And that you have not been presenting a vision of a good society for the future? That this is the way we want to build a new Sweden or a new Britain. And at the moment we're in a intermediate period. You understand? An intermediate period when the old structures have failed or finished or succeeded in doing what they were doing, And now we need to confront rentier capitalism, the plutocratic corporations, and think in a different way in order to enable the whole of society to share in this income that's being generated. That's why I support sovereign wealth funds. That's why I think that we've got to roll back the subsidies given to the rich and to rich corporations. That's why we've got to do something about the debt mechanisms. But there are new ways of thinking about these problems. And basically, my books are about that. And I'm pleased that more politicians, more thinkers are beginning to address these problems. And I think that the election of Donald Trump is going to make it much more necessary to do it as a matter of urgency.
Yeah. What do you think about the social contract?
I think if you think in terms of a new social contract, that's okay, because it directs our attention to the need to involve some gives and takes, some compromises, some strategic movements. And that social contract has got to be based on the need for a new income distribution system. A new system that says this vast wealth that's being generated has to be shared as a matter of social justice. It isn't right that all of the income is going up to the plutocracy and the rentiers. It isn't right that millions of people are in insecurity with falling real wages, which are not going to rise, those real wages. They're not going to rise. A little bit, but not much. So if that's the case, then you've got to come forward with new ideas for a new income distribution system. And that's the point about this third book.
Can you see a contradiction then between the nation state as a guarantee for welfare and human rights?
I think there's a danger. There's a danger that countries, particularly rich countries, can do what Trump has done and go in the direction of saying to the citizens of Sweden or Britain or whatever, we promise you rights. And in doing so, we're going to deny rights to other people, migrants, others, other countries. We're not going to care about that. That's dangerous. I call it utilitarian politics. It's the greatest happiness for us, a majority, and never mind the minorities. It's a shocking perspective. And it's what a lot of politicians are doing. They think, if we can get 30% of the electorate supporting us, we'll probably be in government. 35%, very good. We never mind about other issues. I think this is a terrible perspective. We've seen it. We understand it. But it's up to us to put pressure on these politicians, know that this is immoral to do that. And I think these new precariat groups that are growing are going to be doing that. They're going to be saying to people, don't you behave immorally, opportunistically. We want a good society. And the young today are the most urgently in need of a new future, a new ecological future that cares about the environment, cares about our communities, cares about caring for others. And that is an agenda that is profoundly different from what we've had in the last 30 years. Good?
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry.
What?
Last one.
Last one, all right.
You talk about the widespread use of utilitarian perspectives in many ways. What about universalism?
I have profoundly believe in universalism.
Yeah.
Rights are either universal or they're not rights. And that's why I believe in a universal basic income. Every citizen, every resident should be receiving some income support as a right. Okay? I think universalism is very important for social solidarity, for social cohesion. And the Scandinavian models of the 20th century always were founded on principles of universalism. But they were eroded in the 1980s and 1990s because in going into globalized economy, there were concessions and all sorts of things. So inequality has been rising in Sweden faster than in any part of Europe. Shocking. Of course, it started from a lower level, but that's no excuse for allowing a trend to growing inequality, because that erodes solidarity in the long term. And very quickly, Sweden, like other countries, could lose that sense of universal solidarity. It's okay for me, but never mind them. That mentality is something that must be resisted. And I think that too many of the politicians in Sweden, as elsewhere, have been just thinking about their own careers, their own narrow agendas, their own stepping stones to success, holding office, whatever it might be. And really you need a mass movement from the precariat to hold their feet to the fire, because otherwise they will always be cowards. And we don't want cowards as our leaders. Thanks very much.